The heat on that July day in 1940 wasn't just oppressive, it was unforgettable. It hung heavy in the air like an omen, thick and still, settling over Los Angeles as a boy named Craig Kenneth Brolin took his first breath. He would grow up to be known by another name, James Brolin. But in that moment, there was no applause, no bright lights, only the silence of a world that didn't yet know the weight he would carry or the resilience he would develop. What shapes a man who spends most of his life trying to be seen? And how does a woman, silenced by grief before she could even speak, find a voice that shakes the world? This is not just a story about fame. It's about the loneliness behind the curtain, the quiet pain that hides behind red carpets, and the kind of love that grows only when the performances end. James Brolin's early life was built on discipline that felt more like punishment. His father, a building contractor, ran the house like a military camp. Rigid schedules, chore charts, weekly grades. There was no space for softness. His mother, a former silent film extra who had given up on her own dreams, had little warmth left to give. At just 7 years old, James was hospitalized for 45 days with severe asthma. Alone in that hospital bed, the world faded to silence again, and all that remained was a boy learning to endure. But somewhere in the stillness, something sparked. He was clever. At 9, he took apart his father's wristwatch and put it back together perfectly. Still, it wasn't intelligence that moved him. It was emotion. It was James Dean, on screen in East of Eden, whose raw vulnerability lit a fire in him. James didn't just admire Dean. He became obsessed, studying his every move, mimicking his presence, and even making silent films with neighborhood kids, desperate to express something he didn't yet have words for. When Dean died, James didn't speak for 11 days. His grief was so deep that it terrified his drama teacher. But it also brought attention to his talent. One of his short films caught the eye of Nicholas Ray, the man who directed Rebel Without a Cause. It was the first time anyone saw him for who he really was. But recognition didn't make the road easier. Hollywood is not kind to those without connections. James had the looks and the passion, but nobody cared. He slept in his Volkswagen behind a 7-Eleven, eating cold canned beans and reciting monologues into the darkness, wondering if anyone would ever notice. He questioned whether he even existed if no one could see him. And then, a janitor changed everything. The man overheard James practicing Shakespeare and arranged for a screen test. It led to a small role on a medical drama. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him going. His big break came in the most unlikely way, by fixing a Universal executive's car. That simple act earned him the role of Dr. Stephen Kiley on Marcus Welby, MD, and a Primetime Emmy. Suddenly, he had made it. But success didn't erase the scars. His first marriage crumbled under the weight of distance and emotional emptiness. The more roles he took, Skyjacked, Westworld, The Amityville Horror, the more he poured his pain into his performances. His inner turmoil became part of his art, and yet, something was still missing. While James was fighting to be seen, on the other side of the country, a little girl named Barbara was fighting just to survive. At just 15 months old, she lost her father to a medical mistake. Her mother shut down, numbed by medication and grief. The family crammed into a tiny Brooklyn apartment, and Barbara grew up sharing a bed with her mother and brother until she was 16. The world outside was loud, but inside, her life was quiet and cold. Her stepfather offered no comfort, and her mother never said she was proud of her. Barbara learned early that no one was coming to save her. But even in the shadows, she found a way to dream. Music became her secret world. She sang to herself, to empty rooms, to anyone who might listen. Her voice was haunting, powerful, full of pain, and impossible to ignore. Teachers noticed. Audiences noticed. Still, rejection came often. She didn't look like other stars. People told her to change her name, fix her nose, become someone else. She refused. Her breakthrough was a nightclub performance that earned a perfect score and led to her first Broadway role in I Can Get It For You Wholesale. A Tony nomination followed. Then came Columbia Records, where she demanded control of her music. Her debut album won a Grammy for Album of the Year. Barbara was no longer invisible. But with success came scrutiny. Critics called her difficult. She was too assertive, too demanding, too different. Yet she kept pushing boundaries. Funny Girl became her signature, running for 867 shows. Her transition to film earned her an Oscar. She tied with Katharine Hepburn. It should have been enough, but she wanted more than fame. She wanted to change the rules. Producing A Star is Born, winning the Oscar for Best Original Song, fighting for Yentl for 15 years, writing, directing, and starring in it. Barbra wasn't just making movies. She was rewriting what was possible for women in Hollywood. She became the first woman to win the Golden Globe for Best Director. But the Academy didn't even nominate her. It hurt. But she didn't stop. She made The Prince of Tides, Nuts, and a legendary HBO concert. She won the Directors Guild of America Award. Again, the first woman ever to do it. But even as the spotlight burned bright, fear still followed her. Stage fright kept her away from live performances for 27 years. When she returned, it wasn't just a comeback. It was a triumph over fear, over silence, over the weight of everything she had carried for so long. By the time James and Barbra met in 1996, they were both tired. Not of life but of pretending. Barbra had gone on 28 dates without connection. James was supposed to meet someone else. But somehow they saw through the noise. They saw each other. It wasn't love at first sight. It was quieter than that. Realer. James proposed 3 times. Barbra kept saying no. But then came a 24-page letter, handwritten, filled with honesty and heart. That's when she said yes. Their 1998 wedding wasn't a Hollywood spectacle. It was private, meaningful. Barbra wrote a song for the day. James learned her lullaby on piano. They didn't need to impress anyone. They just wanted peace. And peace is what they built. They kept separate finances. They invested in a custom $35,000 mattress they called the boardroom bed. A place to talk, to reflect, to dream together. Over 425 consecutive nights, they completed puzzles, wrote reflections, and took long walks to settle arguments. Their love was in the details, the quiet rituals, the respect, the patience. It wasn't perfect. It was real. And it became the foundation for everything else. Barbra continued her activism, focusing on women's heart health and bringing awareness to a silent killer. Her campaign saved lives. Her 2023 memoir, written from the sanctuary of their bed, told her story in her own voice. It was a tribute not only to her past but to the safe space James had helped her build. But life, even in love, is never without shadows. In recent years, Barbra's health began to decline. The details were kept private, but the effect was clear. James began turning down roles. He stayed home, caring for her, making tea, organizing her notes, doing the small things that add up to devotion. This wasn't the man who once slept in his car waiting for a chance. This was someone who had found something more important than recognition. He had found purpose in love. Together, their story has moved beyond red carpets and awards. It now lives in the quiet moments, the shared meals, the late-night talks, the way they still choose each other every single day. In a world that often confuses drama with depth, their love has been the opposite. Steady, enduring, deeply human. It's not a perfect story. But it's a powerful one. Because in the end, it's not about who got the most applause. It's about who stood by your side when the lights went out. James Brolin and Barbra Streisand have shown the world that love doesn't need to be loud to be lasting. That the greatest roles we'll ever play are the ones that require no audience. And maybe that's the kind of love we should all hope for. One built not on performance, but on presence. If you found their story as moving as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are more untold stories behind the fame. Stories of courage, heartbreak, and love that endures. Stay with us.